Today, I want to take a look at a recent mock draft from Mel Kiper that he put out on ESPN in the past few days. Now we are a lot closer to the NFL draft, only a few weeks away, which is pretty exciting. And if you guys want to stay up to date with all draft news, draft weekend, I'll be putting out videos breaking down all the different players the Packers select, so make sure you have the post notifications turned on so you get notified anytime I make one of those draft videos. So, as I said, I'll leave it linked down, the entire mock draft, in the description down below if you want to check out the entire thing. And this one is a 2-round mock draft, so we have 2 different selections to look over. So, first off here, he has the Packers selecting at number 23, Mykel Williams, outside linebacker, Georgia. He says the Packers had 45 sacks last season, tied for 8th, but that's a little misleading. They were really good at converting pressure into sacks, but they got pressure only 29.8% of the time, 22nd. Williams was hindered by an ankle injury in 2024, which kept him to 5 sacks over 12 games. But he has the explosive traits to be an extremely effective edge rusher. Other spots of interest would be receiver and cornerback, so expect Green Bay to take a look at guys like Emeka Egbuka or Kentucky corner Maxwell Hairston too. And so in my mind, I think when you look at the Packers' first 2 rounds, a successful draft, in my opinion, is at least getting one edge rusher, maybe a defensive tackle as well. But I think that the Packers' defensive line is one of the areas where I do think the Packers need to really solidify the unit. It does sound like Brian Gutekunst, at least he's publicly stated, that he believes the Packers have what they need on the roster. But I assume that because the Packers haven't made any moves in free agency when it comes to signing any edge rushers, you also throw in the fact that TJ Slayton was signed elsewhere, who was really solid against the run for the Packers in 2024. I just think it's all pointing to the Packers taking a few defensive linemen pretty early on in the draft. And so specifically, if you guys have been watching the channel, I do want the Packers to take an edge rusher round 1. Now, when we look at the edge rusher options, it does come down to who is available at 23. And Mykel Williams, he's a very solid prospect. He's a little bit, on the bigger side when you compare it to guys like James Pierce Jr. But Mykel Williams, 6'5", 265. He didn't have a ton of production as a pass rusher in college, but I'd say he does have a lot stronger floor as a run defender because of his size, 6'5", 265. He is only 20 years old as well. If you look at his sack production the past 4 years, 4.5 sacks, 4.5 sacks, 5 sacks. And then according to PFF, 11.1% pass rush win rate, 7.6% run stop win rate. So he's a solid prospect. Personally, if James Pierce Jr. is available at 23, I'd rather the Packers take him. He's a little smaller, 6'5", 243. So same height, but about 20 pounds lighter. The thing for me is James Pierce Jr. just was much more productive as a pass rusher, and in my mind, that's where the Packers need to take the biggest step forward in 2025. And so when you compare his pass rush win rate to Mykel Williams, it's nearly twice as good. Pierce Jr. has a 23% pass rush win rate compared to Williams' 11.1 pass rush win rate. And Pierce Jr. also has a better run stop win rate, 10.1% to Williams' 7.6% run stop win rate. So I really like James Pierce Jr. a lot. He's a little bit smaller, and if I had to guess, I would say the Packers typically take guys more in the mold of Williams as opposed to James Pierce Jr. But you do, when you look at the Packers roster, they do have Brenton Cox, who's a little bit smaller as well, maybe a little bit heavier than James Pierce Jr. But I just think the Packers need to add someone who has proven that they can get to the quarterback, and that's what James Pierce Jr. did. He had his highest season was 10 sacks during his college career. And so, do I think that it would be a mistake to take Williams? No, it's just my preference to take James Pierce Jr., even though I think Williams can be a solid player. I know the Packers like to take guys who are great, physically gifted, even though sometimes they're willing to overlook maybe less production in college. I'm just hoping this year that they go for a guy who has proven that he can get to the quarterback consistently. And then now if we move to the second pick here, round 2, pick number 54, Kiper has the Packers taking Jack Bech, wide receiver, TCU. He says, Bech was great during Senior Bowl week, and he finished the 2024 season with 1,034 yards and 9 touchdowns. The Packers offense likes to distribute the ball to multiple pass catchers with 3 wideouts Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and Jaden Reed, seeing at least 70 targets. Besh would be another reliable playmaker in the mix. So when it comes to the Packers drafting a receiver, I know there's been some mocks having them taking a receiver round 1. I know, they've met with multiple guys who look like they could potentially go in round 1, like Matthew Golden. I think that this would make more sense. Just from the standpoint of them going receiver round 2, sure, they could break the streak of not drafting a receiver in round 1 for nearly 23 years since 2002 with Javon Walker. I just don't see why they need to do that unless they think a guy, when they're at 23, if the top guy on their board is receiver, okay, I understand that. But if you consistently found successful receivers outside of round 1, why not, try it once again and go for someone where go for a position where I feel like you have a bigger need at edge rusher or defensive line potentially. And the Packers are pretty good at scouting receiver talent. Dobbs being a 4th rounder who I think is a solid guy. The Packers just have a history of success finding great receivers outside round 1. So Besh could be the guy. One thing I love about him, us Packers fans, watching last year, a ton of drop issues. Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, some of the highest drop rates in the NFL. And that is something that Jack Besh does not have a problem with. He only had 1 drop in 2024, which led to a 1.6% drop rate. So he's very, sure when it comes to his hands. He played most of his snaps outside at receiver last year, close to 80%. And here's a quote from Dane Brugler of The Athletic. He has a draft guide, The Beast. He said, as a hybrid receiver / tight end as a true freshman at LSU, he was part of a pass-catching group that included 4 future NFL draft picks: Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Kayshon Boutte, Trey Palmer. And so to see that he had the most receptions among those guys, Malik Neighbors is a beast, Brian Thomas is a beast. As a freshman, that has to say something. And then here's another excerpt from Dane Brugler. He says, although he isn't super dynamic, Besh is a smooth, physical athlete who can get in and out of breaks with gear change and route savvy, head fakes, body lean, etc. He is a skilled ball tracker and plays with supreme confidence in his ability to adjust, frame, and finish grabs. 1 drop on 91 targets in 2024. Overall, Besh's acceleration is more build-up than immediate, and he will need to prove himself versus NFL press coverage. But he is urgent as a route runner with the ball-winning skills and competitive personality that will play. He has experience both inside and outside, and his play style is reminiscent of Puka Nacua. And then he also adds that he gets after it as a blocker with plenty of compete in his DNA. And just seeing that, it made me think that this is someone Matt LaFleur probably loves. He loves those guys who are willing to block and willing to do the things that maybe don't show up on the stat sheet where, the fans in the NFL will maybe notice it as much. But when guys are willing to be blockers like that, that's something Matt LaFleur definitely values. And so it does sound like he could be someone that could make sense when it just comes to the type of player the Packers would want to get. And when you look at the fact that he does seem to have some ability to do a few different things, the fact that he used to be more of like a hybrid tight end a while ago, that is interesting. And I feel like there's a lot of different ways the Packers could use him. I do think that with the Packers, you look at the receiver room, Christian Watson, the injury, we don't know when he'll be back next season. They signed Mecole Hardman, which is cool, add some speed. I'm not sure how much of an impact he's going to make. Hopefully a lot, but based on the recent past, we'll sort of have to see what happens there. And so with Dobbs and Watson being in the final year of their rookie deals, it does make a lot of sense to draft a receiver higher up in the draft, round 2, round 3 potentially, just because then going into this season, next offseason, you just sort of have some more flexibility when it comes to deciding whether to pay Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs, and you get another guy in a cheap rookie-type contract. So Besh seems like a solid guy, solid player, solid route runner, and he's someone where he can play in the slot, but he played a lot outside as well, and so you can sort of use him in multiple ways, which I think is interesting. So all in all, I like the positions in this mock draft. As I said, I'll go James Pierce Jr., but I still think Mikael Williams is a solid prospect, which I feel like the Packers would typically prefer someone of his size, and so it wouldn't shock me if they chose someone like that over James Pierce Jr., potentially, if he's still available at that point. But those are my thoughts. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.